Bienvenidos. Welcome to the Careers Without Connections podcast, the podcast for underrepresented professionals who are building their careers from scratch and navigating unfamiliar professional spaces. I'm your host, Johanna Linares, a first-generation graduate and also a first-generation professional. Today, I'm very excited to introduce our guest, Johanna Rincon. To give you a little bit of information about Johanna, she was born in the Dominican Republic and moved to the United States when she was just 14 years old, without speaking any English at the time when she came here. She began her career in hospitality over 25 years ago, starting as a page in New York City, doing things like running errands, delivering newspapers, and walking dogs for some of the city's most high-profile residents. Today, Johanna is a regional learning and development manager now based in Atlanta, where she focuses on leadership development and helping professionals grow into their next level with more clarity and confidence. Through her work and personal journey, she has supported hundreds of hospitality professionals in navigating career transitions, building confidence, and creating a more intentional path forward without losing themselves in the process. So thank you so much for joining us today, Johanna.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you.
Thank you. Thank you. So, Joanna, I have to say that your background is a really powerful example, and you are just a living testament to grit and determination. Looking back on the barriers that you faced as a young immigrant, just having moved to a brand new country, 14 years old, you don't speak the language. What would you attribute your ability to keep persevering through challenges and advance so notably in your career?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think for me, it comes with the situation, right? For many of us immigrants, we come to this country, and for me specifically, my father made a lot of sacrifices to bring me and my brother here. When I came here, I was 14 years old. My whole life was back in the Dominican Republic. My mom was there too. And I came here, even though I was so young, I was always very clear about this big opportunity that I had. And I was very grateful. And I always wanted to make sure that I honor the sacrifice that my father made and my mom too, right? By leaving us to come here and to let us come and really take advantage of this opportunity and to leverage being here with the opportunity to study abroad, to learn the language and to do all that. For me, that was one of the biggest motivators, even though I didn't have the clarity. I didn't really know much what was going to be the result of all of this. I was always very positive and I was always very grateful about it. And I think when we come from a country that there's a lot of lack of opportunities, right? There's lack of resources and you see yourself in front of this opportunity. I think if you're someone with values and someone that knows how hard your parents have worked, right, to give you everything in life, that to me was like the biggest motivation to start my path and to continue it without knowing much of what was going to be honest.
I definitely can relate to that aspect of being able to look at the sacrifices that your parents have done and how that has positioned you to have opportunities and to have choice and to not want to take that for granted. And
Mhm.
to your point of really wanting to leverage that and be able to take advantage of being able to start here versus your parents working from here to get you here. I feel like your point of clarity also really stuck out to me, which is a lot of people like you and like myself who are figuring it out as we go, we really struggle with clarity because we don't have a ton of guidance or familial exposure either from our families or those networks around us that our families might have access to. I wanted to ask, why is clarity something that should be definitely prioritized for us? Like, why is it so important that us first gen professionals, we find that in the early stages of our career?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think I didn't really have the clarity at the beginning, right? And sometimes even that really helps you, right? Not having the clarity to know what you want starts to help you shape a little bit of, what that path is going to look like. Once I really understood that you need to have help around you, you need to have people, mentors, individuals that help you get that clarity, that's when I started to be more intentional about it. I remember when I first started working at my first job after I graduated from school, I had this job where I was in charge of delivering all these brochures to like different hotels around Manhattan. And I knew that when I graduated high school, I wanted to go to a school to do travel and tourism, right? Coming from the Dominican Republic, like I wanted to work for a hotel. And when I went to school, the school told us that they were going to help us to find a job, right? The job that they helped me find was really like a sales representative job. And that was okay to me. I took it anyways. But I remember while doing that job and like going to this list of hotels every day, walking so much up and down in Manhattan. I remember I was always with a stack of resumes, like giving them out to all these hotels because I knew, even though I didn't have that clarity of like, okay, this is exactly the role that I want and what I want to do, but I had some sort of clarity of this is not what I want to do for the rest of my life. This is just the entry level for me to get to a hotel. And I remember always giving my resume to every hotel that I went to, and that's how I landed in my first job at a luxury hotel, having that little bit of clarity of like, I don't want to do this forever, but I do want to get in hotels, right? It helped me to start shaping that journey for me. And so sometimes not having that much clarity, it's good because it helps you to continue to stay focused on continuing to learn, continuing to perfect that vision that you want for yourself and for your future. It's a process, you know, still to this day. I've been in this country for so many years, almost actually this year in September is going to be 30 years. And yes, of course, Yes, I know it's crazy to even say it. I can't believe it. It's been 30 years. But even to this day, you know, I do feel like I continue to search for even like bigger goals, right? Because you feel like you have find clarity in like the season of life where you are, but then as you continue to evolve and grow and you kind of close a season of life, then you get into another one. And then there's another thing that you need to find clarity. And what are you going to do next? So I think it's always a pursuit of finding that, right? And being intentional about the people that you surround yourself and the people who help you get there and be more clear with what you want in your life.
I really like the way that you framed finding clarity at the beginning, where you were almost reverse engineering it. You broke it down into such a digestible way of, okay, maybe if you're not entirely sure of what do you want, what do you not want? Like, what are you not
Right.
enjoying about where you are? And so that honestly just opened a whole other perspective for me just now, just from hearing you say that. But to your point of having others around you to help giving you guidance and clarity, has there been any specific instances that you can think of that having a person to have access to and give you that guidance really made a change for you as you were navigating your career?
Yeah, I mean, I think there was one person that I always, as I was working as a front desk agent in my second luxury property, there was this leader that I remember always. So I was a front desk agent. I was always out there at the front. And this leader, she was someone so confident and someone with a presence. And the way she walked, the way she conducted herself, sometimes people really impact you in a way that they have no idea that they're impacting you and they're not even saying anything. They're just being themselves and they're just like being that leader. And she was that person for me. She actually inspired me to go and learn to pursue public speaking. I wanted to become a public speaker because whenever this lady will come and talk to us, all the employees in any meetings or any events, when she spoke, everybody was like waiting to see what she was going to say. We were listening, and she made such a big impact in my career in that way because it was that kind of leader that you aspire to be. And of course, she was a woman too, right? So even more, right? She's still my mentor to this day. And I met her 20, what? This is almost 20 years ago. Sometimes we really underestimate the value of looking ahead and seeing the people that have made it to where you want to be and learning things from them, or even approaching them and asking them questions. I remember at the beginning, I was almost intimidated to ask her questions. Like, I never asked her officially, like, to be my mentor. I just always approach her with questions and I will observe her. And then as I started to grow in my career and I got promoted, then she transferred to another property. Then we got the opportunity to work again. Life always kind of brought us back together somehow. But to this day, like, we're friends. She knows she's my mentor. I adore her. You know, it's those people that sometimes God sent them to you, to your life, and for you to pay attention and to learn from them. And I have different mentors, right? Like, I have a mentor for my career. I have a mentor for, like, I'm an entrepreneur too, right? Like, to learn about business, for finance. There's a lot of power in having those people around you. You know, growth really thrives in conducive environments. If you surround yourself with the people that will motivate you and the people who will actually push you and stretch you to be the best version of yourself, those are the people that you need to hone in and to ask the questions and to do everything that you can to be as close as you can. I always say, if you're the smartest in your classroom, then you're in the wrong classroom, right?
Yes.
So, to your point, mentorship and having those people around you early on in your career, in your life, they help you. They help you find clarity. They help you get to where you want to be. And sometimes just by watching them, you actually get so much out of the relationship.
You mentioned this one mentor that you still talk to this day. She was kind of like your first, and your guys' relationship came to be almost unintentionally. But do you feel like you have any tips or things that you now are like, okay, I'm looking for a mentor in finance, for example, this is what I'm going to do to find this mentor?
When people are looking for mentorship, one of the mistakes that sometimes people who want to approach someone to be their mentor is to actually ask the question, "Oh, can you be my mentor?" Because it's just like this weird thing. It's like, okay, so like being your official mentor. Okay, so when are we going to meet? And so sometimes the best mentorship, they actually happen very organically, right? Like, you start talking to the person and you ask them questions. If you are someone who wants to make sure that someone that you respect, someone that you want them to be your mentor, you want them to pay attention to you, you want them to invest time, right? Because remember, when you're asking someone to be your mentor, you're asking them for an investment, right? An investment of time, energy. And so the best thing you can do as a mentee is to come to them prepare and ready to ask questions and ready to actually be invested in whatever they're giving you, right? I always say mentorship, it's like a buffet, right? You take what you think will fit you and what you think will actually work best for you, but you don't have to implement everything, right? At the end of the day, your mentors are giving you and sharing experiences and wisdom from things that they have been through themselves, but you don't have to apply everything. You don't have to do everything the same way they did it, right? Because at the end of the day, we all have our own individual journeys. If I will break it down maybe into 3 advice, I will say, number 1, be intentional about the person that you are selecting to be your mentor. Number 2, come ready to ask questions and to be very prepared for this time. And number 3, when you meet with that person again, tell them what you did or what you implemented from something that they share so that they see that whatever they're actually giving you, it's meaningful and you're applying it. Because there's nothing more rewarding for a mentor to know that whatever you're giving that person or whatever advice, they're actually taking it and applying it and taking action. And there's a result. So yeah, that will be my 3 advice.
That makes so much sense when you frame it that way, and especially the part about letting them know that, they're getting a return on their investment, not
Yeah.
necessarily that the relationship is transactional, but so that they're getting some level of fulfillment and betterment for themselves too.
I will also add to that you also try to bring something and try to add value to them, right? In any way that you can. Because at the end of the day, it's an interchange of communication, right? And I'm sure as much as you can learn from them, they can also learn from you something. So also being prepared in that way, not only to ask questions, but maybe to add value to them and to say, okay, maybe they don't know about this. Let me bring this and show them or tell them. Maybe it's an app, especially if you're a younger person, right? Talking
Yeah.
to an older person, maybe it's a new AI thing, right? Like share that. And I'm sure they will appreciate it. And they'll be like, oh, okay, that was great. Thank you. Like add value to them as well.
Yeah, I think that that is something that I personally have struggled with as I have been navigating spaces and being a younger professional, being someone who is a relatively newer graduate, is trying to figure out how can I also, bring value to this so I don't just feel like I'm just like leeching your time and your energy.
Mhm.
But AI is definitely like the one thing that I've been able to leverage in a space where I'm surrounded by people who have like years of like really well crafted expertise and experience and the area of work
Mhm.
that we do. But I'm definitely going to ponder more about what other types of value I can bring to people as I continue. Right now I'm in a stage of my life where I'm trying to build this podcast and enter the social
Yeah.
media space too. And so I've definitely been having in the back of my head, like, I want to get plugged in with people who are doing this and they are 5, 10 steps ahead of me.
Yeah, it's a great idea. And again, you never know. Sometimes you assume that people know what you know, but there's value to be added. Maybe there's a simple conversation, right? And you're just sharing this one thing and you'd be like, oh, actually, that's great. I didn't know that you could do that, right? But you have to be intentional about it, right? And you have to be of service. At the end of the day, we can all add value to each other in a way that sometimes we don't even expect. But yeah, it's valuable.
Yeah, definitely. I love the way you put that. Something that I wanted to go back to is, especially in what you're doing in your position, you are kind of like the resource for people who are struggling to get clarity. If someone were to come to you and say they were struggling to figure out exactly which direction they wanted to go in, where would you start with them? Would you ask them specific questions, or how would you kind of work with them?
So, from the work that I do now, I'm a learning and development manager. What that means is I do all the onboarding training, I do a lot of different facilitations for training. But one of the other things that I do in this capacity is I coach. I get to coach a lot of employees and leaders as well. And that's like my favorite part because I'm also a certified John Maxwell leadership coach. And it's something that I love to have those one-on-one conversations with people. And so when I get people, especially employees, they're a little bit they don't have that clarity, right, that we were talking about earlier, and they're trying to figure it out in their career. The first thing that I like to do is always ask questions, right? Coaching is all about really helping people to find the answers within themselves. I usually ask a lot of questions, that will help them get a little bit of introspection in their why and why do they want to get to that next level. Like, let's start there. Where do you see yourself? And what part, if they already have an idea of what they want to do, like what part of that thing makes you excited, right? Because you need to be clear on your why. Like if you're going to put a development plan together, right? You need to have some clarity of why are you doing that, right? Because then when times get tough, you need to have something important to help you continue and to fuel you in wanting to continue this journey, right? That's why I like to start there with the clarity, asking questions like, what are some of the skills that you have that align with that thing? Or have you identified some of the skills that you need to develop to get there? If not, then let's do an inventory. Let's go back to your review from last year, from 6 months ago. Let's see some of the comments from your manager. I also like to ask questions on to see if they know themselves a little bit, if there's a little bit of self-awareness. It's important as a professional for you to be self-aware. What are some of the things? What are some of the blind spots, right? The things that maybe you don't see in yourself, but other people see them, and work on those things. And a lot of the times it's not about the technical skills, it's more of those soft skills that people need to develop to get to that next level. The emotional intelligence, having the difficult conversations, critical thinking. Those are the skills that normally the majority of the people need to work on to get to that next level, whether that's in leadership or staying on the same level, but maybe just growing on a lateral move. But they need to have those emotional intelligence and interpersonal skills develop, because if not, things will definitely get challenging as they progress in their career.
I think any job you could have, no matter how technical it is, those soft skills, that interpersonal level, your ability to communicate is always going to be invaluable.
100%. Yeah.
But especially in a career like hospitality, how do you find those blind spots that you mentioned
Well,
just now?
there is a lot of different things you can do. There is assessments you can do. I don't know if you're familiar with DISC, for example. So DISC is a personality and communication assessment, right? Where you do all these questions and then you get a report delivered to you, and then it tells you a little bit about like, who you are or how are you wired, right? We're all wired differently. And according to DISC, there's 4 types of personalities. You have the red personality, right? The D, who is a very direct person. It's like the natural leaders, right? Like the born leaders, right? Have you ever seen people that they have that ability to like command a room, and like they're the natural leaders. So those are the people who have that D personality, the red. Then you have the I, which is the yellow personality. So the bubbly, the butterflies, the people who love to talk and connect, the ones that walk in the elevator and they start conversation with the person there about the weather or something. Those are the yellow personalities. Then you have the S, which is the green. These are the people who like to keep the peace in the room. They like to help others and they like to kind of keep everybody at peace. And those are the people who normally, when there's a problem, like they're the ones making sure that everybody is talking and there's no drama, and the D's are not like going crazy, and the I's, they're keeping things in control. And then the C, or the blue personality. So those are more analytical people who like to understand the why of everything, right? They need to know all the answers before they make a decision. I guess I'm sharing all that to say all of us have something in our personalities, a little bit of everything. Some of us have a little bit of more, like I am in an S. So more I than S. But again, we all have a little bit of that. So when you do those types of assessments, you can learn and understand a lot about yourself. And one of the things that you learn about you is blind spots. What are some of the things? Because when you're reading those reports, you're like, oh my gosh, that's definitely me. I do that. You learn about that. And then you're able to then communicate with other people a little bit differently, or they able to learn that about you and they can approach you in a different way. I actually like when people involve me in the decision. I like to be involved in the planning, or I like to like go out and connect with others. Like send me to the meeting, send me to the thing. I like the spotlight. But then other people might not like that. So knowing those things about yourself and about other people help you again with communication, help you to get to know yourself more. And the more you know yourself, the better you can communicate with others. And that's the whole point of those type of assessments. And then I will also say continuing to grow and being intentional about growing and learning and going to that next course, that next seminar, that next meeting. It's like the more you grow, the more you know you need to grow. When you haven't traveled much, you haven't been to places, when you start traveling, your eyes, like they begin to open, and it's like, oh my gosh, the more I travel, the more I want to travel, because the more I know, there's so many beautiful places out there that I don't know. Well, I look at growth the same way, right? Like the more you grow and the more you start like this journey of developing yourself and learning all these things, it's like the more excited you get, or at least that's how I feel. And the more you want to continue to do the next thing and grow and continue to develop those skills.
Do you feel like an important part of growth is, especially when you've uncovered those blind spots, is putting yourself in positions to say, okay, I don't like doing this, but I'm going to do it because it's going to make me a little bit more comfortable with it?
Yeah, I think I have challenged myself many times in many different ways. As a matter of fact, the position that I'm in today as a learning manager is a result of me wanting to, again, to be that public speaker one day and to be in front of people doing trainings and speaking. Number one, because English is my second language, right? For many years coming to the United States at 14, I was already an adult. So I had to learn the language when I was here for a very long time. Whenever I would talk to people, like I was thinking in Spanish and then translating it. It was a very exhausting process. When I got to a point where I was like, oh my gosh, I speak English. Like I don't have to translate this stuff. Like it's fluent. I'm actually thinking and saying the words. And so for me, that was like a moment. And I was like, okay, if I can now like speak in public without freezing and without feeling so scared of forgetting what I'm about to say or like not knowing how to say it, then that's going to be my next thing. So yes, I have challenged myself in that way and to put myself in situations where if I know that thing is going to help me grow and get to that next level, then yes, I'll do it. And that's a growth mindset, right? Looking at everything as an opportunity, even when things don't go the way you want them to go, you look at that thing and you say, you know what can I learn from this? Because I know there's a lesson behind all of this. There's a lesson and I should be grateful for it. And that's, I think, the thing that sometimes we need to be more intentional about it.
Yeah. And of course, nobody likes doing something that they're not good at. And so, to your point of the more you do it and the more comfortable you get, and you see, like, oh, wait a minute, I don't have to think about it so hard. And I'm actually kind of good
Yeah.
at this. And then that's when it gets more fun.
Yeah. When you put in your reps.
Yeah, definitely. One of the first times that we really sat down and talked, that you did a whole research initiative interviewing high performing hospitality professionals to better understand challenges that they face when they're navigating career growth and
Mhm.
transitions. What was interesting about your findings in that while we're on this topic of growth?
I got into that journey almost a year and a half ago. Basically, I wanted to understand me coming from my whole journey that I went through and knowing that it's not easy to get to where you want to get in your professional life, right? Because life happens, you get married, you have kids, or there's all these other things that could happen along the way. I wanted to understand specifically in hospitality, what are some of the barriers and some of the roadblocks that people have when it comes to developing their careers. So I interviewed 53 professionals in the hospitality industry, and that took a really long time. That took a year and a couple months. I didn't know it was going to take that long, but it did. And I'm glad it did. I learned so much. But one of the things that I learned, one of the things that kept coming back every time. It doesn't matter where you are in your career. We all get to a point where we don't know what we're going to do next. We get stuck, right? And so I saw that coming more and more. People, really, they have done it all. They're a master of their craft, but it gets to a point where you get tired of doing the same thing, or there's no opportunities that you see. Like there's a ceiling, a glass ceiling, right? That you're trying to break and you're trying to figure it out. And it's hard, especially those individuals who didn't have mentorship. They lack the community. We all need community. We all need mentorship. We all need to have an idea of our skills. I interview a lot of talented people that even though they were so talented, they felt stuck because they didn't know what was that next thing they can do with those skills that they learned in hospitality, right? There's many factors that come into play, right? Sometimes you don't want to pivot and do something different because you want security, you want job security, this notion of job security, and you are afraid of the unknown, which, it's real. Your fear of the unknown. But perhaps that skill that you have that you learn in hospitality, you can take that skill and you can leverage it and you can do so many other things. I'm not saying that you have to become an entrepreneur, right? But you could go maybe to a different industry. You can learn within hospitality, maybe a different field, right? If you work in hotels, maybe you could go and now maybe start working in a private club. Or if you are in a cruise ship, you can come now and work in a hotel. So there's like all these beautiful skills that we have in hospitality, and we learned so much that I was very surprised to see how many people there are out there that are lacking the creativity to get to do something different and to feel like almost sometimes hopeless, thinking that there's nothing else out there. The other thing was, hospitality can be an industry that it's very, it's intense. It's a 24/7 industry, right? Operations, whether that's hotels or sometimes even restaurants, it's a 24/7 operation. And so burnout was a theme, definitely. Burnout, people, work-life balance, which I call it work-life harmony. Need to find harmony in your life, in your professional, in your personal life. That's hard sometimes to achieve in hospitality. So I saw a lot of that. And a lot of the people that I saw that they felt like they wanted to do something different is because they didn't have that harmony in their life between professional and personal. So it was very interesting. My hope is that I will actually do something meaningful to help a lot of people in that space in the future. And I don't know yet what that's going to look like, but I invested a lot of my time and this pure like research, interviews. And I know that I will be able to do something really meaningful in the future to help people with that, because the more I talk to people, the more I realize like, oh my gosh, there's definitely a need for help. Also, there's a lack of resources when it comes to developing your career in hospitality. If you go to YouTube, you go to Google, you don't find videos, people like doing videos on YouTube about hospitality career. So there's a lack of resources, there's a lack of community, and there's a lack of guidance out there. That was the biggest thing from the research.
And I think that also just goes to your point earlier of everything is transferable. So even though right now you're like, I know there's a need and I know it needs filled, I'm not sure how I'm going to do it. I think the fact that you're just starting with that curiosity and that genuine passion, and as you continue to work your way through it, it's just going to get you closer and closer to one day it's just going to be like, oh, this is how I want to do this. And then again, going back to your point of as we go through life, our priorities shift, we go through transitions, and we have different areas of our lives that we want to fulfill, different goals that we want to see through. So
100%.
I really appreciated about our podcast today, how harmonious everything was and how everything just looped together and fed into one another. But I want to close us out by asking you, is there anything that you're currently working on that you're excited about? And how can people support you or stay connected with you?
If this interview would have been a couple months ago, I probably would have been like, oh, help me find people for my research. But I concluded my research right now. I'm really focusing on, I have a 18-year-old who's actually transitioning, starting college. And so I'm focusing on that and that season of life of almost becoming an empty nester. My husband and I, but very soon, I do want to write a book. And I am actually this year, I'm going to start writing my book. That's one of my goals for this year. So there's going to be focus on there. Perhaps I will do it focusing on career development, hospitality, because there's a need there. There's a lot of great books out there about hospitality that talks about service and all of that, but not necessarily about the people who are in it. So that will be one of my focuses for the future. I try to be active on LinkedIn. And so if any of your listeners out there want to follow me, I am on LinkedIn under Johanna Rincon. You can follow me. I post, just sometimes tips on career, hospitality, leadership. And yeah, we can connect through there.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us today, Joanna. And thank you to all of our listeners, especially if you made it to the very end of this podcast episode. Of course, subscribe, like, comment. I don't see people commenting on podcasts ever. I would love to start, seeing that more often and just encouraging that. And of course, my inbox is always open. I love hearing from people. I love getting questions. I love connecting or even getting feedback on, hey, this is something I'd like to see more of or less of. So thank you so much, everyone.